Sabrina. Oh
Yes.
my gosh. That was a session if I ever knew one. Okay. Like that was the session. And I'm so excited to be able to chat with you a little bit more, do a little bit of an extended session here,
Okay.
and answer some of these amazing questions that we've had from the group. So let's just jump right off.
Okay.
Someone asked, who should be actually doing the meeting with board members? Should it be the executive director and CEO? Should it be the development director? Should it be, somebody, the board chair? Who should actually be responsible for conducting these conversations and facilitating it? And I feel like in my experience, it's kind of been a little bit of both, but I would love to hear your opinion.
Yeah, so I'm gonna take the long way to that answer because I'm gonna talk about different meetings. So recruitment meetings, right? If you're talking about recruiting, the CEO, right, and the board nomination committee. It doesn't have to be the chair. It could be whoever's on the nominating committee. Could be talking with the board member or potential board member, right? If it's about building relationships with the board, then that's your meeting with that individual board member. You're trying to develop a relationship with that individual board member. And it's critical that you do that because you're creating board champions, right? Because you got to remember at the end of the day, you don't own your nonprofit. It is not owned by you. The board is the governing body. And so you need to have a good relationship with board members. And sometimes it don't work out like that. It's just sometimes. And so that's why you need to develop those individual relationships. Get yourself one or two good board champions. That's your relationship where you go to lunch with them and you go to dinner with them. If that's what you're trying to create, that's yours. If you're talking about a fundraising meeting where you're practicing or talking about how are we going to identify, a donor or how are we going to qualify this donor, then the team needs to be involved in that. Your resource development person needs to be involved in that. You as a CEO needs to be involved in that. But I'm gonna step back just slightly and let you know that I am a hands-on person. So you have a resource development person for a reason. And some of that meeting and talking about identifying and qualifying, that resource development person is more than capable of doing that. So I do want to preface with my personality as well.
I love that. Talk to me a little bit about the differences in boards. Because you were talking about a governing board, but sometimes there are specifically fundraising boards or there are advisory boards. Talk to me about the difference between these various boards and maybe how and who interacts with those various boards as well.
Yeah, so there are varying boards. Of course, there's the governing board, which is the corporate board. Some people refer to the governing board as the working board. That's just the stage that they're in. If you're a new nonprofit, you more than likely have a working board. You don't have you have a CEO or a founder who's not getting paid, that kind of situation. So that's like a working board. That's still a governing board. You have to set policies. You have to do all these things. You also have sometimes where people refer to as governing boards because they've never had to fundraise before, right? That's just the title that, well, we're a governing board. We're not a fundraising board. All boards are fundraising boards. Let's drop this. There is no such thing. You are a fundraising board. That is one of your primary responsibilities, to ensure necessary resources. Now, how you ensure those necessary resources, that may be different. It might be, we have this grant and I warn you, do not put all your eggs in one basket, because if that basket breaks, your organization goes away. But there are those.
Put all your eggs in one grant basket. Come on, somebody.
Exactly.
Okay. See, so, we after session now, so we can talk.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But if you happen to be one of those organizations who have their eggs in that one basket, then as the governing fundraising board, your job is to steward that relationship and build that relationship with that grant funding source, because grant funding sources have the right to change their mind. And that's what happens when you put all your eggs in one basket. If they change their focus, or that family decides they're going to go in another direction or something like that, then your funding goes away. So even in that case, you still fundraising, your job is to steward that relationship and to make sure it doesn't go away, right? So let's get that out there. Advisory board. I love a good advisory board. And let me tell you why I love a good advisory board. My advice, it depends on how you use your advisory board, but I use my advisory board in this way. My advisory board were people who I would love to get on my governing board, but they are not available for whatever reason. They are, very successful business people. They don't have a lot of time. They're very influential in the community. Everybody wants them on their board. They bring it all to the table. Those are the people that I made my advisory board members. And what I did is they met quarterly. Each one got to host a meeting, and I took my strategic plan to them and I share with them, here's our strategy going forward for the next couple of years. What is your input around that? How can we get there? I took the marketing plan to them. I took the resource development plan to them. It was to get them engaged and to get their feedback, because what I've learned is where advice is given, money soon follows. So that one, they're advising and they're giving advice. And so that's where how I used my advisory board. And then fundraising committees. Fundraising committees are great as well, because sometimes you just have board members. There are people out there that are great fundraisers who might not want to serve on a board. They just want to be activated for a little small amount of time. And that's okay. You activate them for that small amount of time. You build that fund, that strong fundraising committee around your gala or around your golf tournament or around whatever event that you have. And that becomes your fundraising committee. And that gets other people involved in your organization. So there's my 2 cents on that.
I love that. Y'all, I hope y'all have your pen and paper, okay? Because I got my pads out here. Listen, she's giving out gems. Where advice is given, money often follows. And I think that is so, so key. And one of the things that we did for our advisory board and the various advisory boards that I built is that sometimes you need the name, right?
Yes.
Like advisory boards, sometimes I just had the great name, the CEO of somebody, the mayor of something town, you just put them on your board because they're a bridge, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes when you have very influential people, if they're willing to lend their name to something, that alone is going to open up a door. Remember, we talked about door openers in the session, right? So figure out the people who are going to be opening up those doors for you. That is so good. Question: have you ever had a board member leave when you brought in structure or accountability? Because all of these different things are talking about different structures, parameters, focuses, purposes. Have you seen people leave because of it?
Yes, I have. I have seen people leave because of it. I'm just going to be very honest with you. People will leave because of it, because there is accountability in place, and it's okay if they leave. You still treat them with respect and dignity on their exit out, because you never know when that relationship will come back around and it's going to be beneficial to you. And so I've had, I was talking to someone recently and they were like, when I joined your board, I was like 20 something years old and it was the first board that I came on and you were saying you got to do this, this, and this. And I was scared. I was like, wow, I didn't mean to scare you. But he's like, it was one of the better experiences. And now he's gone on to serve on school boards and he's a professor at the university and he's doing great things. But I never took the time to look at it from that perspective. But when he shared that with me, I was like, okay, I get it. I can see how it could be intimidating to some, right? And maybe they're just not ready for it at that time. But the ones that are ready for it will step into the role. And again, be patient, give them space and grace, right? Find out what their strengths are, find out what their inventory is, and you create their path to success. Sometimes they don't know their path to success. You are developing that relationship with them. So oh, you're good at this. Well, this is how this could benefit this organization, and you empower them, and then they'll feel like they're getting involved, right? And they understand, oh, this is how I can contribute.
I love that. I always say you either gonna get right or get left. And that's
Exactly.
okay. Okay. That's okay. People will either rise to the occasion when you set the bar or they won't. And it's okay. It's not your purpose to drag everyone along with you. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
If you're
Exactly.
dragging them along, you're not focused on your purpose. You're not focused on your organization's mission and what is most important. So I love that.
Yep.
Speaking of infrastructure, is there a recommendation of how often boards should meet?
So so there's two schools of thought, right? If you have an active committee structure, quarterly is okay. If you have an active committee structure, that means your committees are meeting in between board meetings and they're actively getting things done. With an absence of that, I think monthly board meetings work well. That's just my opinion. There is no, the IRS don't tell you how often you have to meet. IRS says you got to meet at least once a year, have some minutes. That's what their requirement is. But what are you trying to get accomplished, right? And do you have the structure in place to meet quarterly? Do you have active committees? Do you have a marketing committee that is meeting in between quarterly meetings? Do you have a resource development that's meeting in between? Do you have a programs committee? Do you have a finance committee? Do you have the committee structure in place? If you have strong committee structure in place, then go for it. Have your quarterly meetings. In absence of that, I would say a monthly meeting. And even when I say a monthly meeting, that doesn't mean 12, right? That you could take the summer off. My board did not meet in August. You weren't going to get quorum in August because everybody was on vacation or doing something. And then our December meeting was more of a Christmas banquet. And so there's that flexibility around that. So that's in my opinion, right? There is no set right or wrong answer. You figure out what works best for your board with all those parameters that I just provided.
I love that. A lot of this seems like it's really focusing on, I always say you got to know yourself, but in this case, know yourself, but also know the needs of your organization, yes. Right? You need to know the needs of your organization. Like I'm looking at a question about someone asking, how do I differentiate these different needs and whatnot? And I really feel like the answer to that is like, you got to know what you need first, right? Mm-hmm. And that's going to help you dictate and determine who you want to bring in. So one of the things that I did for my one of my organizations, we were a youth sports organization, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was looking at, okay, we know we're going to need volunteers. We know that we're going to want to get companies involved and whatnot. So what you did, I pulled up the list because it was based in Baltimore, top philanthropic organizations. Then I filtered that between health and wellness, who was focused on the health and wellness space. Out of health and wellness, who was focused on youth health and wellness. Out of youth health and wellness, which of those companies had metrics for their volunteers to get involved? Like so these big banking companies and these big financing institutions and consulting firms, they all have volunteer hours that they need. You know what I mean? So how are you, be strategic. You got to know what you need first, because how can you ask someone to give and you don't even know what you're asking them for?
Exactly.
And then you get frustrated when they don't give what you think that they should give. You know
and you're like, because you didn't even know what you wanted to begin with. So and that's what I tell people. Your board members is dependent upon the goals that you have. Exactly just like you said. If you know you want to build and you're going to be doing a capital campaign, do I have a construction person on my board? Do I have an engineer on my board? Do I have an architect on my board? You got to know where you're trying to go. And then you get the people that's going to help you get there. It's simple as that.
If that's not a word for your life, you need to know where you want to go. Come on, somebody. Yes. Okay. Let's talk about recruitment, but specifically diversity in recruitment.
Yes.
How do you build a diverse board? And one of the things that I really want to preface in this, you used to think something that was so key and so poignant, and I need people to understand. You don't need to be rich to give. Nope. So many people think, oh, well, if they're not a millionaire, no, you just need to get someone who's going to give at their capacity, right? And so many people, and then also a lot of times people think that is a one size fits all or a one look fits all. Come on, somebody, right? So how do we be more intentional in our outreach and our recruitment and view with all lenses, right?
And I say, I hate to be cliche, but I use this tool. I use the board matrix. And if you're not using a board matrix, I encourage you to do so. So a board matrix is a pretty simple tool. You list your board members, and you say, these are the ages, these are the race, this is the industry that they represent, this is they have experience in this is the expertise they bring to the table, this is their cognitive skill, are they visionary, are they strategic, are they consensus builders, and you map out your board. And then you look and you say, oh, here's my gaps. I don't have anybody Black on my board, or I don't have anyone from this age group on my board, or I don't have anyone from this industry on my board. And now you know what you're looking for. You have who you're looking for, and now you try to find that specific individual or specific, description to fill the gaps on your board. Now I serve on this museum board, and for them, it's in their bylaws. And a part of their bylaws says that at least like 25% of the board will be female. So some people what is important to them, they put it in their bylaws, and they know, oh, this is something we focus on, and this is something we look at. And so we've hit this cap. We have all these men. Remember, our bylaws say 25% needs to be female. And so your bylaws can also dictate that. But I love a good matrix. That's what I love. And when you're talking about diversity, if you're not writing that down and really looking, it's not because we're bad people. It's just because we simply focus, and the people who look like us, we get comfortable with the people that look like. That's generally our circle. And if you're not writing it down and not intentionally and being focused on it, you can go swing way one way or the other. And it's not just about race. Again, it could be about gender. I actually at one point had so many males on my board, and I went to a foundation and they pointed it out to me. And I was like, yeah, how did that happen? How did that happen? And so that from there, that's why I said, I need to really focus on this matrix, and we got to do better. And so it's not that we're bad people. It just happens. If you're not focused and you don't make a conscious effort to look at those gaps that you have on your board, you're going to fall in a comfort zone. And we fall in the comfort zone. We tend to surround ourselves with people who look like us, whether that is female, whether that is race, whether that is age. It is human nature. And so you have to call your own self out on the BS. Simple.
Listen, if you ain't, this is your board, this is your life, this is everything. And I always say you miss what you don't measure. So if you're not measuring what diversity is to you, you're gonna miss it. Yep. You know what I mean? This is so good. Talk to me about the small nonprofit that feels like they got to do everything on their own. It's just the ED, and the board members ain't getting involved. How can we really start setting up real tasks and deliverables, right, for board members, so that they can actually get involved and not just put it on their resume? And I think that this kind of comes back to what you were talking about in terms of it's all about what you're intending and what you're expecting in the beginning. But tell me more about the nonprofit that's just starting up.
So this is the thing. A lot of times with small nonprofits, they're not being very strategic. They just want a warm body, or they, like I said, they put their mother, brother, cousin on the board. So we got to step away from that. Just because you are small does not mean that you can accept the crumbs that are being left behind for you. You do not have to accept that. You just need to have a little structure in place, right? And with that structure, have what your expectations are, and then recruit towards those expectations. Now, does that mean that you're going to find like 3 or 4 people within the next month that's going to fit that expectation? No, you could have a vacancy on your board for quite a while, but it's okay, because when you get the right person, you vetted them and they are the right person for your board. So that is okay. I know when I first started out, it was like, oh my God, we have this many board vacancies. And then you just try to rush to fill it, and there's no process in place. It's like, oh, you sit around the boardroom. Oh, well, I know such and such. And they good over here. Maybe they'll be good over here. It bit us every single time. It was not a one time that it was successful. And so I realized, oh, I got to slow down. I got to really focus in on the people that I really, really want. And that's hard sometimes for a small nonprofit, but that's what you have to do. And then for a small nonprofit to get your board engaged, that relationship is even more critical. Getting to know the board members that you bring on, knowing their inventory is one of the keys that's going to help, because if you know their inventory, then it's as simple as a phone call. It's as simple as when we go to lunch, right? As I had a board member, Ella. So I knew Ella's inventory. Ella stayed up at night and she shopped on QVC. That's what she did. She had a whole room, a hoarder's room of stuff that she ordered from QVC, and she just put it in the closet. So anytime I needed some auction items, some silent auction items or something like that, I'd be like, Ella, what you order from QVC? Can I get that for those? And she was like, yeah, I have this and this and this and this. Okay, we need some silent auction items. Bring them on in. Or, it's really getting to know them. It really is, because they don't think about, they really, you are the professional, whether you are a founder and you're learning that you are a professional, because you are a professional. This is a business that you have started. You, as a professional in this business, you are the expertise, or you have to become the expertise, and you have to be the strategic person for your board. So getting to know their inventory, getting to know them, and then aligning that inventory with what you need to have accomplished is going to be one of the great points for you. So again, it could be a board member. This is a good example. I had a board member who went to school with the person who manages Mario Lopez's career in Hollywood. I said, do you still talk to him? Yes, we do. I just saw him. Do you think that you could have him talk to Mario to come down here and to be a part of our gala? Da, 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 da. I hadn't thought of that. Let me ask him. Why didn't you think of that? Why did I have to think of that for you? But I did, and he did, and he came. And it's like, okay.
Wow.
So it's knowing your board inventory. They don't make those connections like that. You have to. You have to listen when you talk to them, when you go to lunch with them, when you are interacting with them. Make a note. You might not jump on it right then and there, but you make a note about it and like, oh, okay, I know somebody in that arena. So
I love that. And you said something so good, is that like we try so hard to fill these spaces. Don't let the space scare you. You know what I mean? Don't let the space scare you. Sometimes you're going to have space, and that's okay.
It's
because
okay.
you can fill it with the right person. I love that.
Yep.
Sabrina, what are some final words that people can take away when it comes to building their board? If they're saying, hey, you know what? I was at a 3, I'm at a 3 or 4, but I want to get ready to revamp and keep going up this list to get to a 10. What are some final takeaways?
Well, if you're a new or a small nonprofit, I always say, right, have a banker, which I said earlier. Someone in marketing is always good. Having someone that has some fundraising experience would be nice. And then also having someone with a financial background. I try to keep those 4 staples around. So if you don't have those, and an attorney, you always need a good attorney, because they charge about an hour, y'all. And if you get them on your board, that's pro bono. So those 5, I always try to say, have at least those 5 in place, or to recruit from those 5 pools, right? And then if you already have your board and you're just like, I like them somewhat, but I just need to re-engage them, then you know what? I say that's when those board retreats come in, or having individual lunches with them and say, hey, what can I do to get you more involved in the organization? What is it that you need to get involved, or to get more involved? These are the goals that we're trying to get to. But again, it's all about building that relationship. I can't stress that enough. You got to invest time in building the relationships with the board members. It amazes me how many people have a board, but they only see them during the board meeting. Mm-hmm. It's not going to work. Mm-hmm. It's not going to work. And what I've discovered is board members need to build loyalty towards the CEO. So when
Mhm.
the CEO calls and asks for something, they don't want to personally disappoint you.
I
And
love
the
that.
only way you're going to do that is to build those relationships, because that's based on mutual respect. Now you got to do your job, of course, but it's going to be based on mutual respect and relationship.
I love that. Where can people get some of these tools and frameworks that you've been talking about?
So you can go to my website at www.supportingworldhope.com and they sign up for my newsletter, right? And then when they sign up for my newsletter, I send them a password to my free VIP resource library. And in that library, there's documents around board development. So I talked about the agreement. I talked about the 5x5 cultivation plan, the list generator. They're all in there. They have resource development tools, marketing tools, sample policies. It's all in there and it's all free and it's all accessible to you. Because again, the whole purpose of my company is to help lower the stress that you are under as a fundraiser in the nonprofit world or a leader in the nonprofit world, because it can be stressful. And we are often, Floyd, you know this, we are often overworked, underpaid, and
Hey,
overstressed.
come on, somebody. Come on, somebody. Sabrina, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I love to come back anytime, my friend.
Listen, you already know. It's on the docket, okay? I'm giving you my intention, right?
Yes.
I'm setting the expectation.
Yes.
Thank you, Sabrina.